Thank you, Anish, and good morning, everyone. So, in recent times, the world of work has witnessed a transformation, and mainly due to the impact of the pandemic. What we've observed is that the prolonged remote work scenario and longer screen times have resulted in many organizations reporting higher attrition, digital fatigue, and declining employee engagement levels of existing talent, and even higher difficulty in attracting top talent from the industry. While compensation is definitely one part of the equation, winning the talent war requires a renewed approach to talent management. We believe the conventional models of engagement no longer hold valid, and organizations are now experimenting with innovative employee engagement models that are specifically catering to the hybrid workplace. And these models include persona based engagement, a comprehensive wellness program, redesigned employee recognition programs, maintenance of healthy work environment, and effective fitment into a hybrid organization. And even the use of cutting edge digital tools and platforms which deliver integrated talent management for seamless employee experience. And now that few organizations have already started working from office and many others are opting for a hybrid work model, the question remains in the minds of the leaders. What is the best way to engage with employees to provide them with a secure work environment? And how do you develop an employee engagement strategy that aligns with the new business narrative? So, in today's session, you can expect takeaways on evolving trends in employee engagement, persona based engagement to drive greater inclusion, snippets on effective benefit strategy, and how do you transform the organizational culture for better employee cohesion. So, with this, I would like to kickstart the panel discussion with our esteemed panelists. And today, I'd like to welcome on board Vibha Salaria, HR Director at Aptio, Srikanth Vachaspati, who's General Manager and Head People and Organization from Siemens Technology and Services, and Sabresh DS, who is the Chief of Staff, Director Business Strategy and Operations at Intuit India. So, welcome all of you. Very excited to kickstart this conversation. And the first theme that I'd like to touch upon really is what are the newer engagement models that are coming up, and specifically new engagement models that you plan to leverage for your hybrid workflows. So, Sabrish, I would like to first invite you into the conversation and ask you a very pertinent question that will the new engagement narrative be about reskilling or mitigating biases or benefits or rewards or something else altogether in the foreseeable future?
Thank you, Priyanka. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. I will bring in my perspectives of this topic and how it is in the organization where I'm from. So to answer your question, Priyanka, firstly, reskilling, mitigating biases, benefits, rewards, all are equally important topics. And these have been important irrespective of whether we moved virtual or not. The only difference has been the way we execute our execution strategies on some of them have had some minor shifts. Maybe I'll call out some of them. Now, if you look at the employee life cycle, it starts from, since you also spoke about benefits, it starts from the new hire, right? When we talk about the new hire, of course, the benefits related to work from home, joining bonuses, all of that start to play a larger role when the employee joins the organization. But what is more important in this virtual setup is how we are engaging the employees. Now, obviously, the employees in the organization, you need to have them integrated into the organization, and also we need to see how the existing organization is up and engaged, right? I'll call out two or three things which at least I have seen a significant amount of shifts when it comes to the way we engage. One is the way we do our communications. See, most organizations have a communication strategy. Most of them are channeled around the formal organizational structure. What I mean by the formal organizational structure is you have a hierarchy, right? You have a formal hierarchy in the system, and there is a communication strategy which aligns with this formal hierarchy. But every organization also have an informal hierarchy, a social fabric which is there, which is more, it is aligned to the formal hierarchy because by virtue of the team structuring, we position the individuals in that group, but it is not necessarily tightly coupled to that. whenever we do our communication strategy, it's, as I told you, it's most around the formal hierarchy and the structure. But it's very important in such a hybrid setup that we also see how this is channeled for the informal hierarchical structure. I'll give you simple examples what I mean. Uh, when we talk about communications and we do mass communications, it's also about how the social hierarchy is well informed about this communication channel. So we have more informal communication channels like Slack is the technology that we use here, but having means by which there's a decentralized communication, everybody in is informed at least to an extent where the informal structure is also is able to gain and gather information. So how does our communication strategy revolve around that is something very important that comes in our role. And this is very important from an overall engagement perspective. People really do want to know what's happening in the organization. Why are they there? What are they doing? How does it impact them? And then overall having a thought process which aligns with an informal structure is also very important. Of course, then comes aspects around learning and all of that, because we are in the setup of people in the organization, right? When it comes to learning, having easily accessible, shorter duration online courses with journey maps play a role. Most of them are very obvious, easily accessible. Everyone knows it has to be easily accessible. But what are most important that's come nowadays is the shorter duration with content with journey maps. See, one thing, why do we want employees to come into a training session? Because it's for the organization good as well as the employees good. To get previously it was much easier to get a mind share of employees. You could ask them, come for a half day session, come to office, come to Zoom and do it. We'd have in a different setup. Now we have a hybrid setup. Some are coming to office, some are not coming to office. Now, how do you make sure that most organizations, what they do is they give a plethora of options to learn. You talk about a topic, you'll have by default, you'll have 10 different options to learn that topic. It is there. Everything is there. You LinkedIn learning, that learning, this learning, Udemy, you subscribe to 100 things and you have all of this in place. But how do you structure bite-sized learning content with the journey maps, which allows employees to not get lost? It's like when you go to a buffet, you have 100 things to do. By the time your tummy is already full, by the aroma of that already fills your tummy, and you're wondering what all to eat. But how do you channel that to bite-sized learnings with journey map? That really helps in this setup. Of course, continuing on, since we talk about engagement, reward, spotlight, how do we give on rewards at the time of occurrence of the event, by means by which you have systems and technologies in place by which you are able to appreciate someone very easily. They're able to claim benefits for the appreciation that they received. So having such a setup also helps in this overall engagement. So that's what I think. See, it's beyond just benefits, and I think the engagement's all around how we cater to this online and offline setup, because that's how it's going to be. Hybrid is going to be the case. It's not going to change. Some people will come to office, some people will work from there, and it's never going to be the case when everyone is in one place. So how do we change all of these aspects in the typical things that we work with is what I think plays a significant role.
Hey, thanks, Sabrish, and that's a great perspective on learning specifically how it can encourage a journey-based approach to learning where employees actually have a line of sight into their own career growth, and how also we strike a balance between not overwhelming them. And really like that buffet analogy that you talked about, Sabrish. And with that, I'd like to now invite Vibha into the conversation. And Vibha, I'd like to get granular. People have gotten used to the comfort of working from home, and return to work, as we've been hearing, has been met with some degree of resistance or, say, laxity. So, what are the newer benefits that you've introduced to incentivize employees to return to office?
Hey, thanks, Priyanka. I'm really first thing first. I'm really excited to be here and sharing my views. So yeah, COVID has been experienced and has been observed differently by different people. It's gone through multiple phases. Initially, when we had shut down offices, of course, people were very excited. They all got break from that, monotony that used to do. And then there came a phase where it was a frustration phase. But I think eventually everybody came to terms with things. People have managed their work arrangement, they manage their infrastructure setup, they manage their domestic setup and everything. So I think now They all settled. They are well settled in their home. They've got everything in place. But over the last few years or year and a half that we have been in lockdown situation, we have heard from many employees, not only within Aptio, but otherwise, that they do desire to go back to work. They do desire to sit across in a conference room and talk, because we understand that the relationships aren't built over a Zoom conversation. People do miss that personal connection, and they would like to have those happy hours and stuff like those. But yes, going back to what it used to be, like a full blown office, everybody in office, it won't be easy. To my mind, not that folks don't want to, but I think there are a lot of logistical constraints, and some of them are really intertwined. Uh, Now the situation has come, whether COVID or no COVID, the paradigm has shifted, Priyanka. The work outlook has changed. People have managed their way out. The productivity, at least in IT world, we haven't heard the productivity has gone down anywhere. Companies have seen some benefits coming out of it. So I think it's a matter of striking a balance between work and between in person and a virtual collaboration, because both have their own advantages. The way the entire things are trending, the way industry trending, I think hybrid is coming out as the solution, as the more approachable way of blending the two. This can be transient too, but again, this phase will be longer than what we expect it to be. Now, to invite folks back to work, even the hybrid solution, there are a lot of companies doing different strategies, and it all depends from one company to another, as we call it, each to its own. It depends on the organization priority, it depends on their financial stability, it depends on, most importantly, it depends on what they believe, what the thought processes are around. Companies giving free lunches, transportation, rewards, XYZ. um, what we're doing at Aptio is to look for a long-term solution which is more sustainable, and people should see the long-term value proposition. It shouldn't be something short-term where when you roll it back, it obviously hurts. So the long-term value proposition is something that should be very well received and should be understood by the employees. So what we are primarily focusing on are a lot of engagement stuff. We are enabling and equipping our managers with enough and more resources to to be engaged with their team members. We're ensuring that our policies are inclusive, especially for the hybrid working folks. All the benefits, all the terms and employment conditions are same, so there is no difference than one would feel. And one of the biggest thing that we focus and will continue to focus is on very focused communication, primarily with an angle of sensitivity, how people are doing, the well-being angle. So focus communication has been a key success and will remain a key success. Aptio, we are looking at re-entry starting January this year. Hopefully COVID remains the way it is, if not it goes bad or something. So that's where we are looking at hybrid solution with these kind of things in our mind, which is long-term value proposition.
Thanks, Vibha. And specifically, since we are on this topic, and you rightly touched upon this, that wellness is here to stay, and that will continue to be important. And we are definitely seeing increased adoption of smaller incentives, like you mentioned, maybe free lunches, transportation, anything that makes it easy for employees to transition back to a office workplace. So since we are on this theme, I'd like to invite Shrikant into the conversation. Hi, Shrikant. And the question that I have for you is that the pandemic saw increased utilization of health and security benefits, vaccinations, insurance coverages, wellness programs like Vibha mentioned, and even telemedicine, etc. So in the hybrid, what will be that differentiating benefit that will sustain employee commitment and engagement?
Thanks, Priyanka, and great to be part of this conversation. I think it's pretty timely in the sense that we are looking at ways, as Vibha put it, re-entry into work at the workplace. You're right. There were a lot of aspects that came out during the pandemic, which focused on aspects of health. both in terms of physical health as well as mental health. And some of these are going to continue. One of the things that companies are looking at is we have found out, and especially the cost of treatment of COVID when you were in hospital during the initial stages were really pretty high. Many of our insurance covers did not cover this as a part of critical illness buffer. So I think there would be a rise in coverage, which companies would look at in order to cover critical illnesses like COVID. Beyond that, what also happens is obviously not every organization will be able to manage extremely high covers. So the ability to purchase add-on covers through the organization is also something that's going to come up. At Siemens, we have introduced this add-on cover where you can purchase insurance not just for your immediate family. You can purchase it for your parents, your in-laws, your siblings, same-sex partners, and even your pets. Okay, so I think some of these are extensions of the benefits that we have. Mental health is, of course, going to be something which is which will continue to have an impact, not just because of pandemic. It came into fore because of pandemic, but also what happens is going forward, it's not just work-life balance as we called it earlier. It's a work-life mesh. You do not know where the work starts and where your personal life, gets meshed in. Earlier, I remember if your kid came into the room when you're doing a conference call in the times that you used to work from home or on a one-off basis, you would actually hush them out. And today it's perfectly okay for them to sit on your lap when you are doing a conference call. I think the world has changed, the meshing has happened, but that brings in its own level of stress. And therefore, mental health awareness and mental health being an important aspect, not just for employees, but for managers to look at. And so education around that and what is acceptable and how to live with that, I think is going to be another huge aspect. But Priyanka, the bigger challenge is what is the new normal? What is hybrid? I think like Vibha mentioned, there's going to be every organization defining it. I don't think there'll be one standard aspect of what is the new normal and the definition of hybrid. TCS, for example, has announced 25% of its employees would be working remotely by 2025, right? Which means 70% working remotely, only 25% to be in office. But for that, we also require a lot of organizational aspects to change. It's not just a question of policy changes saying work from anywhere. We need to be able to enable it on various counts. Our business models need to enable work from home because we work primarily today, at least in the IT industry, on a time and material basis. That model has to have some changes if we were to completely embrace a new working of hybrid. Lots of policies will have to change because the Indian labor laws do not recognize some of these aspects at this point in time. So there are questions like, if my employee is currently sitting in Meghalaya, 5 employees are actually, do I need a shops and establishment registration in Meghalaya? Do I need to pay professional tax in Meghalaya or their base location? If they are sitting somewhere else and their base location is, say, Noida, if they have to travel from Meghalaya to Noida, does my travel policy cover that? Because essentially, on paper, they are in Noida. How do you pay somebody to travel to Noida if they are already in Noida? Right, there are a lot of questions that will come up which needs to be answered as we evolve policies for the new normal. I don't think we are there yet because a lot of these have to evolve over a period of time. And therefore, I mean, I really applaud TCS in saying that we will evolve this over the next 4-year period, because I don't think all of us know the right answers at this point. But one thing is definite, we are not going to get back to 100% work. Right. And the other aspect that will also come in, which again, I think Sabarish did point out very eloquently, is the informal structure. The informal structure is what binds people. It's not just from a learning perspective, it also binds people culturally to the organizations. People also learn informally through known networks when in office, and these networks have been disturbed by people working remotely. So we have to create alternate IT aspects to enable people, correspond anonymously in an inter-company network, so that people can ask the stupid questions and get answers without having to worry about, will I be called out? Will I look bad if I ask these questions and stuff like that? So I think there's a lot of evolution that is required in terms of both policies, in terms of looking at benefits and evolve the new paradigm of work as we get along.
Thanks, Shrikant, and also thanks for pinpointing something very pertinent, which is on how really labor codes will play out. And we've been hearing about the implementation of the labor codes for almost over a year, and really some of those questions organizations are still trying to figure out, and definitely it looks like a hazy picture. But with that, I'd like to now transition to another important topic, and which really hits the chord with a lot of HR and business leaders, which is inclusion. And Sabrish, as you're aware, today's workforce is a potboiler of generational, gender, and neurodiversity. And work from home allowed us the flexibility of integrating work and life into what I call as one circle of life. So what are some of the inclusive benefits to engage employees with diverse needs or people who are at different life stages? For example, people who are new parents or people who have elderly parents at home.
Thanks, Priyanka. I think Shrikant already touched upon some of them when it comes to benefits and the way we look at benefits and health, and like most of the other panelists, every organization deals with it subtly different, but the principle always remains the same. The principle is always to be as inclusive as possible in whatever mechanisms and manners we are offering these benefits. But when it comes to diversity, I think what we should also touch upon is this way of hybrid work of people, some people in office. For example, at Intuit, we have already started doing something called as a soft open, where few employees check in and come into office. And we plan to move to a more, hopefully we plan to move to a setup where more individuals will come to office sometime from January, when we say it's fully open and you can start coming to office. So when it comes to diversity and inclusion, one thing we really need to understand is this is how it, at least like how Vibha clearly stated, for a longer portion of time to come, this is how the setup is going to be, where people will be in office, some people will be at home. Maybe things will change after many years. Towards which direction we have to wait and see, but at least it's going to be the setup now, which means all the way we engage our employees in an inclusive manner has to be considered for this setup. And what does this mean? So if we are completely physically present, taking employees and doing different engagement activities were much more easier, I would say. I mean, you could create a lot of fanfare in office, you could deck up the office, you could say this is how you have to behave, this is how you're going to, you could do several things. But now the engagement models again have to change. The attention span, I wouldn't say the attention span, the mind space and the time space in employees have towards activities have I would say has dropped. Unlike previously, you could say, come for a 45 minutes meeting or a 1 hour session, come, let's see how we interact. Now it's going to be more, so it's more difficult nowadays, which means we need to come up with something called bite-sized engagements. What I mean by bite-sized engagements are very short engagements, informal engagements, where both the offline as well as the online individuals are able to engage at the same time. It has to be bite-sized because that's the only time your attention span you can give. I can call out some examples. When we have to talk about mental health, one of the ways we are addressing it is at Intuit we have a strong informal setup Slack is a technology we use. It can be any form of technology, but we have a very strong informal setup. We have a lot of employees engaging and communicating across different groups, employee groups, which is also there in different organizations, right? We have employee resource groups, we have technology communities. Now, since we are talking about diversity, one of the topics that we did was put up very small engagement posts. People are more used to the social form of communicating, right? Put up small posts in our different channels, asking people to comment on those posts, what they think about what the posts are, all related to diversity and inclusion. Or recently, we also had an activity which was an activity like what do we call it? It's like a virtual game wherein individuals go through different scenarios, and from those scenarios they understand the diversity aspects of things. So things are shifting that from smaller engagements, or when it comes to mental health. Let me touch upon that. Since we're talking about engagement, let me talk about mental health. We are introducing a means by which 1.5 2-minute videos are shared on informal channels, and people are asked to do certain activities around that. For example, if you're doing journaling, you can't talk about journaling for half an hour. It has to be a 2-minute content which is shared offline, which employees can consume at any point in time, and then ask them to engage it over the week to talk about journaling, do something, then talk how they're doing it. So the way we talk about inclusion, diversity, health, bit, all of these setups, the way we do this has to change such that the offline as well as the online employees are equally able to enjoy what we're talking about. And like how Srikanth touched upon, when it comes to benefits, when it comes to all of these things, these are all, it was always, most organizations had tried to make it always inclusive. So it's not that now the new setup has changed significantly, just that the new setup has led to increasing certain aspects of it. For example, when it comes to mental health, you need to make sure that mental health aspect related benefits are all in place. Counseling related opportunities are available. People are able to announce going to counseling sessions or whatever, or it can be your insurance related aspects are taken care of. But so certain things have changed when with the new setup. But what definitely needs to be considered is how we engage and how do we make sure that offline and online people are equally playing an equal part in this, with as less time, space, and attention that is required from them.
Thanks, Sabrish. And I completely second that point of view that we are in fact dealing with a hyper distracted workforce, and having elaborate engagement activities is just probably a thing of past, and it really has to be a bite-sized engagement. So thanks for that perspective, and really like the idea of virtual games and journaling that you're deploying into it. And Vibha, since we're on this topic of inclusion, I have a very pertinent question for you. Talking about inclusion, how has your organization specifically enabled inclusive infrastructure for, say, people with disabilities? So, for example, are there wheelchair accessible campuses, mother care rooms, or even accessible technologies? And this could be across your diverse talent demographics, maybe not just people with disabilities, say working mothers or people with different needs, physical needs.
Yep. So, Priyanka, what you've asked me is a very relevant question, but I think this is a very small part of the overall bigger umbrella of inclusivity. So I'm going to answer this question a little differently. At some point of time, inclusiveness and diversity was probably an option, but I don't think so. In given today's world, it's even a choice. It is something that is core of any progressive and supportive organization. Um, Diversity and inclusivity is something that helps an organization excel beyond the normal, because by doing that you obviously get different perspective, you're able to take a better decision, you're able to get feedback. And of course, there are many statistics which have proven it multiple times that companies who imbibe inclusivity and diversity are able to go above and beyond than their regular commitment what they would have done. So now I think the bigger thing that we need to ask ourselves here, and we need to provide to the employees with special ability, is a culture of inclusive inclusiveness. See, these mother rooms and specially abled toilets and ramps are logistics. Of course we have that. To answer your question, do we have that? Yes, of course we have an environment, we have infrastructure which is very, very supportive of people with special ability. But I think the bigger thing that will help them feel included, the bigger thing that will help them feel part of the system, is a culture that supports them, the culture that promotes them, that culture that gives them the confidence of equalness. At Aptio, we inclusiveness, we definitely have one of our core value, which is fostering a inclusive work environment. And even at our leadership level and even at our employee level, everybody lives this value day in and day out. This is something that we demonstrate in our day-to-day working. We definitely do not differentiate people basis any kind of special ability. What matters is the skill set. What matters is the meritocracy. So if I have to sum up, if I have to summarize my answer to you, do we have all these supports? Yes, we do. But what we need to focus on, bigger thing, is the culture, is the perspective that diverse people and included people brings in. Now, all this while, we were just kind of, are talking about gender diversity and different kind of diversity. I think the base is getting broadened now. Now we have to be worried about the hybrid inclusivity as well, because the time is not too far. I'm going to piggyback on what Sabrish said, that the time is not too far when people will say, you know what, the folks in an office get different treatment and folks on Zoom get different treatment. So it has added more to our inclusive, uh, policies that we have built, or otherwise the entire work culture, the entire actions towards inclusiveness and being diverse in approach, it has added to it, because we got to be mindful of that. So if you recall, in my previous question that you asked me, I mentioned that the policies that we are building for hybrid folks will be very, very inclusive. They all benefits, everything remains constant. There is no change in office and hybrid working employees, at least when it comes to the generic basic stuff. So yeah, so I think the base has broadened for inclusivity with hybrid coming in, and of course, uh, that's something that we got to be very, very mindful of.
Sure, Vibha, and like that term, hybrid inclusivity, and you bring out a very important point on how people who actually choose the remote, if they do have that choice, are actually a little skeptical whether there'll be biases around their promotion, rewards, compensation, because and this is very real, right? People
It
who are
is.
working remote, they have that fear of missing out, and it's a lot of this is up to the leaders of the organization to make them feel belonged and included and assure them of equitable treatment. And a very, very good pointers there, Vibha. And with that, I want to touch base upon something very real, and that's compensation. So, Shrikant, I'd like for you to give us a perspective on what's changing from a compensation point of view in the hybrid workplace. And do you foresee monetary allowances such as car allowance, meal allowance, etc., to be reintroduced? And also a very touchy topic, which is I want to know what's your take on the geo differential pay model specifically for India?
That was a very loaded question, Priyanka. Compensation, I think there are a couple of input factors which are going to determine compensation. You did mention at the beginning about the new wage code, and I think that's something which will determine compensation. The new taxation laws will again have a huge impact on the way compensation is going to be determined. Because if we have to, we used to have this basket of allowances. We moved from fixed allowances to basket. But if your entire basket is going to be treated as a basis on which you're going to do your retirals, organizations will go back to having fixed allowances. So there are, it's something that's evolving based on how the government and when the government is going to be introducing some of these changes in the wage code. The other aspect that's also going to come up is, how, and when you talked about geo differences, that's a huge elephant in the room. It is very difficult in an Indian context in a scenario to come to that. If you look at the US, for example, there are very clear cost of living indices, very clear state-wise differentiated taxation, and therefore it becomes much more easier. And we do know it's been in the news that Google's, the Amazons have very clearly said if you are moving from San Diego, which is a high cost state, to a Montana or a Delaware, you would probably have a reduction in compensation. But that's really understood because in the cultural context, it's pretty much clear there. In India, it's more difficult to do that. Although the cost of living would differ from a first tier to a second tier city, the income tax treatment of house rent allowance will probably bring in some differentiation because we have 50 and 40% as a differentiation in the tax laws. But beyond that, it's going to be very difficult to introduce a geo aspect. But as I said, it will evolve. There are various things that will help us evolve this. One is a usage of AI in wages. Because we need to look at multiple factors. Today, if I look at a Mercer report or an Eon report, do we have city-wise differentiation in compensation? We don't really track that at this point in time. Most organizations have an all India compensation framework, right? So we need to evolve that. We need to evolve at what cost are you able to hire people. So when you have a continuum of, as what we call compa ratio, the distance to the median, you'll probably be able to hire in a second tier city or a third tier city where cost of living is lower at a lower compa ratio as compared to somebody at a higher in a metro like a Mumbai or a Delhi where the cost of living is higher. But that will evolve, and do we have data about it? We don't. So if we start using AI tools to look at aspects like how is your TA able to recruit people? At what cost are people asking for a certain amount of money, right? So some of these will have, it has to be data driven. It will evolve over a period, but no one's going to take an immediate call of reducing salaries at lower tier. It's probably you'll be able to hire at a lower cost because the employee expectation or a candidate expectation in a lower cost city could be lower. But whatever we currently have will be grandfathered. I don't see a cut or a reduction in compensation happening. Having said that, there are other aspects which are also going to determine compensation. As and when we are moving, there are two major shifts which is happening in the world in terms of technology, and it's impacting all industries. I'm not just talking about IT, all brick and mortar industries to service to every industry is looking at digitization. Digitalization is impacting everyone. So there are two aspects. One is what we call brownfield, where we have already existing infrastructure, existing companies, existing processes, and they need to move towards a cloud or a digital infrastructure. The other is the greenfield, where you're starting something new. A lot of startups are in that particular phase, where they're already evolving their policies to meet the digital world. When we start to look at both of these, knowledge of digital skill-based aspects is going to come in very strongly from a compensation perspective. So people who have the newer skills, the digital skills, the ability to look at both brownfield and greenfield movement towards digitization will obviously have a larger compensation because those would be the in-demand skills. And therefore, I think skills-based compensation is something that will evolve over a period of time. The other thing that's also going to impact compensation is our business models itself. As I mentioned a little earlier, we are still in the, if I take the IT industry, the T&M kind of a basis. But as we evolve, there are factors that are happening today. Again, these are elephants in the room, which is also causing us to call people back to work. While if you look at productivity, I think most industries have seen, at least IT and service industries, have really seen that productivity has not really come down. It's over 90%, right? Other than brick and mortar, where you had to be at a factory or where supply chain constraints, productivity of people has still not really been impacted. In such a scenario, why are we getting people back to work? It's because people are moonlighting. People are working multiple jobs at the same time for multiple organizations. And the culture aspect is something that we still need to evolve, because if you look at attrition of people in the last 18 months, people who joined during the pandemic, where they've not properly seen the inside of your offices or their managers, is being higher than the attrition of people who have been long timers. So in that sense, the loyalty aspect, it's not just the loyalty, it's the cultural aspect, the cultural assimilation. As we evolve these, I think patterns will change. We will move to gig modes. You talked about inclusion a little earlier. A part-time job are going to evolve, which will also be extremely good from an inclusion perspective. So the business models itself will change, and that will also have an impact on compensation. So it's again, I think, very exciting time to be in, very challenging because we need to evolve, and we still need to do that when we are running, right? So in that sense, I think this is a great next couple of years for all of us to be able to be on the verge of a massive shift in terms of the way we work and the way everything happens. Work used to be a place that you go to. Now work will end up being something that you do, irrespective of where you are sitting.
Thanks, Srikanth, and also thanks for addressing so many elephants in the room there, really. Labor codes, their aspect of implementability in India, your concept of why really that need to have people back in office, because now you have a very, very volatile workforce, people even choosing to moonlight, etc. So thank you for addressing those aspects. And now I want to also touch base upon technology. And technology really has been an enabler all through the time that we were going through the pandemic, and it will continue to be an enabler even in the post-pandemic workplace. So it's not uncommon for us to hear about companies deploying building management systems, conference room, seat booking apps, and social distancing management technology, air filters, AI chatbots that give, even personal analytics and work in collaboration. A lot of companies even going the extra mile to provide technology for parking and cab booking, your e-vehicle charging points, etc. So in nutshell, what we see is the whole aspect of digitization and technology that Srikanth rightly pointed out will continue to be the differentiator in the new workplace. So Sabrish, maybe I want to ask you this question around what are the new technology touch points that your organization has enabled for safe and collaborative working?
Thanks, Priyanka. Okay, so I think I seem to be more talking around the fact of the dual setups. I like to answer this question from the principal point of view. Okay, and I'll touch upon two of them, and I'll try to fit in some of the things we're doing into two of them. In principle, everyone wants a very less confusing, easy to access, convenient, and safe mode of accessing things. Irrespective of how it has to be convenient, it has to be safe, it has to be easy, it has to be as less confusing as possible. It has to be straightforward. Now, that's one principle. The second principle is, now anyways, everything is a hybrid, or in the future, at least for most organizations, going to be hybrid. How do we make sure productivity, like how Srikanth mentioned, productivity is going to be there, 90%, 95%, it will still be around. But for organization, it's also about the culture aspect of it, as well as the innovation aspect of it. Okay, and what I mean by innovation aspect of it is, in general, the way human mind works is when they speak to more people, and when they speak to more people informally, they get more thoughts, they get more ideas, or when they're physically together in some place. That's the way we've been working, right? It's not that we've always been working virtually and we've been ideating virtually and things. That's not how it has been. So at least for now, the mindset is that if we come together, people tend to talk more informally, when they hear others, or when they gather together informally, ideas come through, innovations happens, and that's the way it is better. So which means technology has to come as near real world, or let's call it as near old world as possible. Let's call it the old world. That's how it has been always, right? in this setup, technology has to enable to make sure how close we can get to this as possible. So these are the two principles. One on convenience and all of that. Second principle, how close we can get to the setup. Now, the first principle, I think most organizations will all do, at least I can talk about from what we are doing in our organization. Make sure we have easy check-in, easy opt-in options to the office. Once you check in, it's simple app, you come in, you are allowed, you're telling, you get a gate pass telling, fine, you've checked in, making sure your vaccination certificate you can upload very easily. Second, you're able to check in and tell. Why do you need to check in? You need to, obviously in our setup, we need to now say, I'm healthy, I'm safe, I'm not sick, so please let me come to office. Okay, fine, you come to office. It has to be convenient. And then once you come in, someone has to say, oh, really, you've really checked in, everything's okay. And because of the fact that you've checked in, your access cards, everything is active and you're coming into office. So that aspect of the business has to be taken care and made convenient and smooth. Very simple application technology allows you to do all of that. Then it comes to how the conference room setup is and all of that. That's again, you need to make sure you are able to interact with the other world from the physical world in an easy way, wherein few of you are in a conference room, few of you are from a home working on Zoom or whatever other form of technology, you're able to communicate. And when you say communicate, it's not just about presenting, right? It's also about discussing, which means you need to have technologies around enabling that. It can be mural boards, it can be mural, which allows you to do some chits and all of that, or it can be technologies which allows you to write on a writing board and in real time, and it's syncing on both sides of the world and all of that. So that's from getting as near real world as possible when it comes to technology around conference rooms and all of that. Then I also spoke about being safe. Now, how do we make sure you're safe? Now we are in a world where we think even touching is going to be a problem, right? So you need to have touchless interfaces as possible when into vending machines and all of that, tabs and all. We start off with tabs and all of that. That's very easy, tabs, lifts and all of that. Now we want to vending machines and all of that. Every other interface, which is, at least we are in a stage wherein having such technologies makes us feel we are much more safer. I wouldn't say it is making it safer. At least it gives a sense an organization is helping everyone to remain as safe as possible. So that was from aspects of convenience and safety. Then I come to, I did touch upon how to make sure the virtual conferencing is made as near real world as possible. Now, the next aspect is around how we collaborate in such a setup. So collaborations always have been, most of the times, there is a certain mode wherein we worked, okay, there is a certain document that we prepared. Let's meet together, let's discuss over a meeting and let's close it. Now we need to have more offline ways of doing it. It's not that technology was not there for such collaboration, it has always been that. But culturally, you should have shifted to that mode of working, because previously it was easy. You're sitting around the desk, guys, come, let's meet up in a room, let's discuss it and close this document. Design document is there, or set up a meeting, close it off. Now you need to have, culturally, you need to shift wherein those technologies are anyways always there. You are using it more in a more efficient manner by which you are able to do some offline commenting, offline discussion, and then come to your real meeting happens as for a more constructive way in which it's as less time as possible. And people already have a meeting fatigue, right? You can't call in meeting for everything. You are in a setup where you have to call a meeting for everything because half of them are differently, which means you need to reduce that, which means if you have to reduce that, you need to find ways of working offline as much as possible. And which means that there's a shift in the way employees work, and for which we have to enable employees towards that shift and encourage employees towards that shift. And of course, as I told you, talking about innovation and all of that, you need to see how technology can enable such informal conversation as much as possible. And I strongly believe that having very good informal communication technologies really helps. Example, at Intuit, we use Slack. And again, as I tell you, it's not that technology has never been there. Slack has always been there since ages. I don't know since how many months we've had different forms of communication technologies. But as an organization, how used to our employees using these technologies to communicate? There is always a resistance to enter into a new channel. And for that, it also depends upon in the organization, there is some when top-down communication happens from certain channels, then people get aligned towards that. So there is a shift in making people get into such informal communication channels, because it not only helps in engagement, it also helps us get as close as possible to the old world, which is being physically around. And yeah, so those from technology perspective, I believe many of them have been there prior to this as well. But enabling employees to make use of it and consciously talking about it, telling that this is the way we are going to interact is going to help.
Thanks, Shabrish, for actually simplifying it for us. Every organization is kicked about using technology, but the question for us to introspect is it meeting the right levels? And like you rightly pointed out, is it bridging the distance between those who are working remotely versus those who work in office? So great pointers there, Sabrish. And Vibha, just curious, what's your take on technology for a safe and collaborative workplace?
So you know what? We've all of us have good, highly technical offices where everything that you need to work is available. A video conferencing room, a nice boardroom, and everything. But again, uh, COVID has taught all of us a lot of things. Some of the questions that you pointed out to your question to Sabrish was that do we have, electric vehicle charging point and various other things. Um I mean, let's not go back too much in time. Even if 2 years back, did we really need those? No, right? I mean, like like Sabrish has been saying it a couple of times that we had everything, but it was never utilized to its potential because did we really get in a room in a Zoom meeting? No, we'll say, okay, you know what, let's get on a coffee table and talk, or let's chat over a walk, let's go to the cafeteria and have a conversation. But I think as we have heard that necessity is the mother of invention. As and when we all got into different situation which was unprecedented, nobody had ever imagined that, oh, everybody across the globe, irrespective of the role you are in, you'll be working remotely. um, did we ever imagine that we will have an HR orientation, a new hire orientation over a virtual environment? Because no, we always felt that the in person can give you that experience. It's always that personal touch. But I think the what we have moved away from a high touch to a high tech kind of an environment. And this high tech is working well because people have come up with different technology. As and when situation kept coming up, we kept evolving, right? Not that everything was thought through that, okay, we should do XYZ because this is coming. No. As things kept unfolding, we started developing thing. To give you example, we have got all our documentation, everything completely moved to an e-format. We do not collect even from our new hires. There's nothing that's like a physical paper anymore. We send them through a document, DocuSign, they update and we upload. Everything is an e-format. So what does it mean? It means that there's no touch, it's hyper-technical, there's innovation, so to say. We moved from our insurance claim. We were all required to submit a discharge copy and this copy and bills copy in person. We have converted that everything to e-format now. Any one of our employee who has to submit a insurance claim, there is no physical copy required. Everything has moved to e-format. What does it mean? That my folks are safe, they're sitting in the comfort of their home, they're getting their claims done, they're getting their money done, the documents are still intact. So like I said, had it been not about COVID, we would have been probably continuing, at least many of us would have been continuing the same format, that okay, give your copy, give this bill, attach copy and submit to finance and they will reimburse this money or XYZ. So I think the way things have moved, people have taken different approaches. Whatever has worked for them, whatever is their requirement. Like I said, every organization has different necessity and they have invented things as per their necessity.
Uh,
um sorry. So you know what, now that we had never imagined that some will have like a formal hybrid working model or solution for our folks. Now that it is there, we are re-entering workforce. So as we speak, we are building an application internally where people can book their, it's like a hotel seating, they can book their cabs, they can book their parking slots, so on and so forth. Because of course, the way because of hybrid, as an organization, we have also taken certain calls on the infrastructure arrangement, so that if that has to run smoothly, there has to be a mechanism, a bridging gap which helps it run everything seamlessly. to mitigate that, we're building this app through which people will book their seats, their parking slots, their cabs, etc. So yeah, these kind of innovations that definitely happening.
Thanks, Vibha, for that perspective, and like that thought of moving from high touch to high tech, and really necessity is the mother of invention. Maybe all those technology tools were always available to us, but we've seen increased adoption of all the tools that have come up or were always there, but not as much in use. So with this, I want to move on to a topic which doesn't get as much attention in the usual business conversations, which is corporate social responsibility. And Shrikant, I'd like to direct this question to you, where what we saw in the pandemic was that the organizations actually went the extra mile to make that social impact in the ecosystem through various volunteering initiatives, disaster relief funds, etc. And in a lot of ways, it also fueled a sense of purpose for people who went that extra mile to support people who needed support. So, in the hybrid, how do you continue to propagate that same sense of purpose, same sense of contributing to the society, making that personal impact in the new scheme of the workplace?
Thanks, Mika. And, to borrow a line that Sabrish has been repeating consistently, not that these things did not exist earlier. We are actually seeing more focus on some of these areas. And CSR activities have actually happened in most organizations in one way or the other, whether it is through employee volunteerism or as a response to something. Like we've always had, for example, when there were floods in Chennai last time in 2015, or floods in the Northeast or in Kerala, we have always seen organizations come together and gather two aspects. One is volunteerism, where people actually go on the field and do some work, or in terms of gathering resources and money and donating towards these causes. So some of these have existed. What has really come up during the pandemic is that the acute need for some of these aspects. At a point in time where we were talking about employees getting together during the pandemic, forming self-help resource groups which looked at hospital administration, which are the beds available in which hospital, how do you redirect people to where to go to. A lot of apps also did come up. So technology has also played a part in this. Going forward, I think some of these which started off now will sustain itself and move to higher level, especially with the help of technology. And very much like what Vibha put it, high tech will also do high touch in the area of sustainability. A couple of other aspects which globally, from a Siemens point of view, when I talk about during the pandemic, what we have done is also unique to ourselves because of the nature of businesses and industries that we are in. Our healthcare industry, for example, during COVID came up with a local innovation where we could do the RT-PCR tests in larger volume in a shorter time frame because that was required and that was part of our healthcare offering. Overall, from a Siemens perspective, when I talk about it, we have come up with something what we call a degree framework, out of which three aspects are pretty important from a CSR and a sustainability viewpoint. We are looking at decarbonization, we are looking at resource efficiency, and we're looking at employability. The other aspects are about governance, equity, and ethics. But these three are really focused on the CSR aspects. Siemens does work with on the ground in villages, for example, to look at sustainability aspects, to look at electricity, self-generation, solar energy, use of technology for efficiency, etc. And our employees also go towards that. A couple of other initiatives that we have taken in the recent past has been not that we can always go down to the ground and do volunteering. We need to have a multiplier effect. So what we have started doing is creating what we call with collaboration with other organizations and NGOs, something what we call an NGO whiteboard, where we have a couple of senior people, our architects, people with experience, being part of the advisory board or the governance board of various NGOs, where they can help them achieve the goals in these areas that we are focused on, and therefore having a multiplier effect. The third aspect that we are also doing is there are a lot of times an organizational goal need not always coincide with an individual's aspiration of where they want to go and help and volunteer. I may talk about sustainability and decarbonization, but there could be an employee who wants to work on poverty alleviation or education at a grassroots level, etc. So what we are also trying to do is we are tying up with a global organization which can provide our employees the ability to do short-term. It could be anything like 2 times a week or 2 hours a week, 4 weeks, 5-week engagements, where they can work with NGOs to provide their input on areas which they feel the need to contribute. And as an organization, we're enabling it. We also have volunteering leave, which helps people go and do this. So in a sense, I think sustainability is the core aspect, and we are making using technology to help people do this either in their individual capacity or in conjunction with what we try and do as an organization.
Thanks, Srikanth, and a very innovative concept there that even for CSR, there is that opportunity through the use of tech and these ecosystem enablements where your employees can take up causes that are personally relevant to them, and very interesting perspectives from all of you on board. And I do see that our audience has a lot of questions for you all, and let's go over all the questions. And Sabrish and Srikanth, there are questions that are directed to both of you. I know, Sabrish, you've been answering in the chat as well, but there's a question on, was there a sense check with your employees on their choice, whether they want to work from office or continue to work from home? And if yes, how was that done? So Sabrish, I know you've answered this on the chat itself. Srikanth, do you want to take a shot at responding to that?
Yes, we did ask our employees. Today, for example, we did a survey to figure out where people are in the first place. We figured out about 35-36% are in their base locations, where their work location is. Close to around 55% of employees are scattered across the country, from Kanyakumari, Meghalaya, Tripura, Goa, Dandeli. I mean, some things which had stood out for me. And about 20% did not answer our survey because they were scared probably that we want to use this data to get them back to work. But that again talks about, I mean, that's also a significant number to tell you what people are thinking. So we did ask this. We also asked them about their need to come back to work or what they felt about coming back to work. A majority of them wanted to get back to work 1 or 2 times a week. There were a couple of aspects which we also figured out about why people wanted to come back to work. It's not just did they come back to work? Yes, 1 or 2 times a week, not 100%. Now, I think that has been pretty consistent, not 100%. Of course, there are certain roles which has to be done 100%. We also determined that. And for our organization, we have determined around 8% of the roles have to be perforce done in office, which are essentially IT related or hardware related, because a lot of times we have to work in a lab and we can't really move those lab instruments out. Technology wise, we've also enabled more work to go hybrid by moving things onto a cloud platform, so it becomes easily accessible. While enablement, organizational need, IP protection, data security, all of these are factors that we work inside from an infrastructure perspective. People are wanting to come back to work at least 1 or 2 times a week is what we figured out in a majority of cases, over 85% of the cases. Yes, so we did ask our employees what they want to do.
So in effect, you made it a very democratic process, Shrikant. Thanks for that perspective. Vibha, any thoughts from your side? What is this process like, just gauging employee pulse around return to work?
Yeah, so we've done both formal and informal process to gather this feedback, Priyanka. And see, one of the thing that we kind of, in a way, made it like little compulsory for our folks. Not now, maybe as in when they were in different location, not in the base location of Bangalore. We asked them to update their current location in our HRS tool Workday basically. So at an all given point of time, we knew how many folks are in office and how many aren't. So that was one thing. Otherwise, yes, through multiple informal channels, we were gauging feedback that where are we heading? How are we trending, right? Very recently, we've conducted a formal survey just to get a directional view of where we are in terms of what is the preference folks have in terms of in office working environment and hybrid. See, in all honesty, remote working is something that we have put a pause right now. We're not saying no to that, but I think we need to get little more data and concrete data around it from the industry, just to see what kind of goodness coming out. Like Shrikant mentioned very rightly in his question that while it's a good thought, but I don't know if we are ready for it, more from infrastructure and other policies point of view and labor laws point of view. And needless to say, the talent war is adding more fuel to the fire, especially when it comes to remote working. So at this point of time, we are going ahead with only two options. One is in office and one is hybrid. Having said that, folks who are away, excuse me, we are definitely going to take a soft landing, which means that they we are giving folks transition time, which can be in the lines of 3 to 6 months. They are expected to work closely with their managers and figure this out, how and where their transition time would be like.
Thanks, Vibha. I like that idea of giving people that transition time, a soft landing approach, like you rightly called. And Sabrish, we have a question for you from Supriya Saripalli, and she's asking, in this moment of future of work, how are you all looking to engage your workforce, especially in those creative moments? Because work from home works great for a task-based job profile.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Supriya. And maybe I'll start off from the previous question which Vibha and Shrikant were answering. Look, we are all learning. That's the way I look at it. It's not that everything is set and cast in stone. As an organization, we do take certain directions. Like how Vibha said, it's very similar to it as well, wherein we say it's either hybrid or work that we are
in office,
in office, hybrid or in office that we are advocating. And we know and we are doing this by a soft landing approach. We start with the soft open, then we go with the partially open. And at every point in time, we understand the sense of the organization. The dynamics of the industry makes it even hard, wherein the way the recruiting happens is happening right now. The dynamics that's playing in the different organizations, what they're offering, how they're offering. So of course, this is a time when everybody's trying to gauge how things will play out, and it's a learning journey. And depending upon the organization mindset, the way we would like to approach it, things will evolve. And I think it will settle in after a certain point in time when we have a majority of organizations adopting a certain approach. I wouldn't say it's the approach which is either Vibha stated. Majority will adopt a certain approach, and that will possibly be there for a certain period of time. And now coming to the question on how do we, your question on it's more for remote working, or rather this virtual work from home kind of approach is for more task-based thing. My perspective is it's again a kind of a mindset. Today we've been in this mindset where we've always worked from office, and we believed work from home was an exception. It's not that work from home was not there. Work from home was, at least in the organization where I've been, work from home has always been there, but that was an exception. People used to work more from office, and work from home was an exception. And that exception used to be for those task-based activities wherein people could exactly know what the individual is working from home. Now the situation threw us in a frenzy. it just reversed around, which means our mindset also will ultimately over a period of time will reverse around it, wherein we are able to very openly accept how work from home can be as effective as working from office. And I think the only thing that as organizations we need to see is how are we enabling better collaboration in such a hybrid setup, creating those moments of truth where they are able to come together, and ensuring that technology enabling this communication and this mode of working as seamless as possible. So my view around this topic is that this is how this is how it's going to stay, and it is the right time that we adopt to this. And here again, different generations have different ways in which this is thought through. If you go and ask the very new employees, the newer generation workforce, you will find a certain percentage who would want to work from office and work from home. There will be certain shifts in certain other different other ranks in the organization. And for an organization to function, obviously you need to find that middle path which accommodates everyone's views and thoughts and opinions. And of course, right now the middle path seems to be hybrid. But again, we need to see how this plays out. But for sure, the mindset has to change.
Thanks, Sabrish.
I'll just add one point here. See, there's no right or wrong answer given this a very, very different time we all are in, or difficult time we all are in. I think each to its own is what I mentioned earlier also. And, the whatever decision organizations take, it comes with a baggage, risk baggage, basically. Now, we just have to identify what is that we need to pick up from the table and what is that we want to leave on the table. It's just that we need to assess which risk is the least, and we do that. Risk is, no matter if we do remote, we don't do remote, we do hybrid, we don't do hybrid, we do in office, we don't do in office. There is a risk element. We just have to identify which one works for my organization, which one works for respective organizations.
Hey, thanks, Vibha. And maybe we'll take one last question from the audience. I know you've all been responding on the chat as well, and I encourage you to continue to do that. Srikant, the question is that how do we measure the effectiveness of the hybrid model? And what would be the measures and metrics that will be used going forward?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, your productivity will end up being one great measure, as long as you're still productive, and also employee engagement feedback about how they feel working in this model. I'll give you a personal example. I had a meeting where I had a couple of people in office and a couple of people virtually. And I realized the place I was sitting, which was a part of the table, didn't help me. I had to move to the head of the table because the camera was the people who are on the screen were at one end of the table, right? So I could look at them. And I also had to virtually call out people who are virtual and ask them to contribute, but because there was a lot of informal chatter which was happening with people in the room. So I think a lot of things which we need to look at the end of the meeting, I'd ask the people who are remote, would they have preferred flying down to Bangalore to be a part of the conversation? And the answer was yes, because they felt that it's not that you're left out. I mean, these are teams that you worked with for the past couple of years. You know everybody, but the way the engagement is, they felt it could have been more productive had they been there in person. So we have to evolve this. One way to do this and to gauge this is to constantly ask people. That the only way you're going to get this is to constantly ask people. In fact, I also responded on the chat. We've been using an AI-based chatbot called Amber, where we are talking to people, gauging their responses, figuring out what they're saying. And these are not anonymous responses, but people have been very, very open about giving feedback. And we're getting a lot of actionable feedback using technology. So I guess the only way we're going to figure this out is to ask and create an atmosphere where people can actually answer your questions without having a hesitation, and that comes to organization culture. But communication is the key.
Thanks, Srikant. good perspective there, and really like that example of using a chatbot to really gauge whether employees are feeling glued enough with their colleagues, and are they really experiencing the culture in the way that people who are present physically do. So we're almost at the top of the hour, but let's spruce up things a little bit. And we'd now like to have a rapid fire, something along the lines of coffee with our panelists, right? So I'm going to ask this question, and we'll be expecting you all to answer maybe in one word or maximum one line, and there's practically no time to think. So it'll go really quick. All right. So the changing paradigm of engagement is, Sabrish,
Merging both the worlds.
Vibha,
Work-life integration.
Shrikant.
Work-life mesh.
Brilliant. Very well answered by all the panelists, and I do realize that we're at the top of the hour. We've received a lot of questions. Almost all of them have been answered, and want to also thank all the panelists as well as all people there as part of the audience for a very enriching conversation. Some great perspectives and ideas exchanged, and we really appreciate that all the panelists made it absolutely real with very, very practical examples from their own organizations and their own experiences. So thank you all, and hope to stay connected and look forward to more enriching conversations in the future. Thank you all the panelists and the audience once again.